Hey guys, tonight we're time traveling somewhere you probably won't want to stay long. You're waking up in the Middle Ages, roughly the 14th century, and no, you're not a knight or a princess, you're just you. And in this case, that means you're probably a peasant. Sorry. There's no alarm clock, but the rooster in your freezing toes makes sure you don't oversleep. The fire in the hearth went out hours ago, and the last embers are now just a dull orange glow. You pull your scratchy wool blanket tighter, but it doesn't help much. The walls are made of wattle and daub, essentially woven sticks covered in mud, and the wind finds every crack, as if it has a personal vendetta against your comfort. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you are listening from, and what time is it for you right now. Drop it in the comments, and maybe we'll see how many countries we can stretch this little peasant hut across. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on a wooden plank covered in something the villagers generously call a mattress. It's mostly straw, lumpy in the wrong places, and definitely hosting several tiny six-legged roommates. The blanket you're clutching is made of coarse wool, slightly damp, and possibly older than your mother. It smells like sheep and smoke and something faintly mildewy that you've stopped questioning. There's a drip coming from the thatch above. You tried plugging it with some rags last week, but medieval waterproofing isn't exactly what you'd call foolproof. Now, a steady drop is landing on the edge of your pillow, a small icy punctuation mark to your morning misery. Your breath fogs in front of you, curling like the ghost of warmer days. You stare up at the rough beams overhead, counting the spider webs just for something to do. One of them moves. You decide not to look again. The hut creaks. You don't know why. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's the wood shifting. Or maybe the ghost of that guy who stole an onion and got caught is just saying good morning. Either way, you ignore it. You have more pressing concerns, like whether your toes are still attached. Sliding out of bed is an act of bravery. The floor is stone-cold dirt, the kind that holds a chill like it's hoarding it for future generations. You step onto it with the kind of hesitation usually reserved for walking into a room where someone's been crying. Your shirt, if you can call it that, is wrinkled linen and cold enough to stand up on its own. You throw it over your head and instantly regret it as the fabric slaps against your skin like a disapproving nun. You dress in silence, adding layers like you're preparing to go on a polar expedition. Undershirt, tunic, cloak, another tunic, a scarf made from something suspiciously itchy, and socks if you're lucky today. They don't match, and one might technically be a sleeve, but they're warmish. Out the tiny window, basically a hole in the wall with a bit of oiled parchment stretched across it, you can see that the world is gray, not dramatic gothic gray, just the dull, weary kind. The kind that says, yes, it will snow again. No, it won't be beautiful. In the corner of the room, a pot of water is frozen over. You chip at it with a spoon to get enough for a wash. It's not so much refreshing as it is spiritually discouraging. You splash your face, yelp softly, and consider whether medieval people even believed in cleanliness. Spoiler, they did, just not in the ways you'd expect. Your hands are cracked from yesterday's work, and your nails have more dirt under them than the local graveyard. You rub them together and breathe on them for warmth, but it's like trying to heat a church with a single candle. At least you're not alone. Your sister is already stirring in the loft above, sneezing into what might be a curtain. You hear someone fart downstairs and then roll over. Classic Uncle Tib. He's been in that exact spot since Christmas. The hearth is dark. You try blowing on the ashes, hoping for the miracle of rekindling, but you mostly just make yourself dizzy. There's no kindling left. You'll need to get more later, or maybe bribe the neighbor with that slightly bruised apple you've been hoarding. She has 3 kids and a weakness for slightly bruised apples. You glance at the door. It doesn't lock. It's held shut by a rock and a lot of medieval optimism. Outside, the wind howls like a wolf that's stubbed its toe, and you shiver without meaning to. And here's where you have a little existential crisis, right on cue, because historians still argue whether the average medieval winter was harsher than today's, or whether it just felt worse because your boots are made of regret and your coat used to be a rug. Regardless, you're here, you're awake, you're cold, and somehow it's still tentative, reverent, and already a little disappointed. The ashes are barely warm. A thin plume of smoke tries to rise, then gives up halfway and drifts sideways, defeated. You kneel and poke around with a stick, the medieval version of hitting the side of the TV to get the picture back. Last night's fire was your proudest achievement. You remember coaxing it into life with brittle straw and sheer willpower, feeding it slivers of dry wood like you were offering it blessings. It had roared well, hissed bravely for a few precious hours. But by midnight it was already sulking, and now it's just dust and hope. There's no such thing as matches. And your flint is somewhere under a pile of tools and half-mended shoes. You consider waking up someone else to help. Then you remember, nobody in this hut wakes up cheerful. Especially not Uncle Tib. He once threw a turnip at your head just because you sneezed too close to his favorite sleeping sack. You roll up your sleeves and set to work. Flint, steel, dry bundle of straw. You strike again and again. Sparks jump. Some even land, but none commit. You whisper encouragement. You threaten. You may swear softly under your breath, though not too loudly, because the priest said bad words, freeze in winter and fall like hail in spring. Finally a spark catches. A wisp of smoke curls, and the straw glows like it's considering joining the land of the living. You blow gently, then harder, until your cheeks ache. It catches, it grows. It almost looks cheerful. You grin, triumphant and soot-streaked. This is your masterpiece. You've done it. You have created heat with your bare hands. Take that, Romans. You feed in a few twigs, then a half log, and sit back on your haunches as the flames crackle. You hold your hands to the warmth. The feeling slowly returns to your fingers. First pins and needles, then blessed heat. You don't cry, but it's a near thing. You glance at the others in the hut. One by one, they begin to stir. Your sister climbs down the ladder with a grumble. Your cousin groans from under a heap of old cloaks. Someone farts again. You ignore it. It's just part of the ambiance. Now that the heat is going, it's time to think about breakfast. You open the cupboard, which is really just a wooden box nailed to the wall. Inside is a wooden bowl of oats, a bit of lard wrapped in cloth, and a single, rather philosophical onion. You scrape a handful of oats into a pot with some water from yesterday. Slightly murky, but drinkable unless it wiggles. You set the pot over the fire and wait. It takes a while, long enough for your stomach to start staging a small protest. Outside, a rooster crows like he's being paid per note. The sound cuts through the morning silence like a gossip in church. You mutter something unkind about poultry and stir your porridge with increasing determination. Eventually, it's ready, sort of. It's warm, which is most of the goal. You spoon it into a few wooden bowls and pass them around. No one says thank you, but someone grunts, with less hostility than usual. That counts. You eat near the door, sitting on an overturned bucket that's starting to split. Each bite is a little gluey, a little too chewy, and somehow still manages to be bland and sharp at the same time. You chew, swallow, and repeat. The warmth helps, though. Your belly appreciates the effort, even if your taste buds have long since given up. As you eat, you listen to the sounds of the village waking up. Distant hoofbeats, dogs barking, someone yelling at a pig. A child cries, then laughs, then cries again. Classic toddler behavior. The door rattles in its frame. A draft sneaks in. You shift closer to the fire and wrap your cloak around your legs like a tortilla. The fire crackles, and for a moment, everything feels almost bearable. You look around the room. The walls are covered in smoke stains, old herbs hung to dry, and something that might be mold, but also might be your cousin's idea of art. The beams above are blackened with decades of cooking smoke, and one of them still has the old nail where your father used to hang his boots upside down. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had cozy homes or just places to survive. Judging by the temperature of your backside right now, you're leaning hard toward the latter. Your eyes wander to the hearth itself. It's not a fireplace per se, just a shallow basin of stone with a pot hook hanging from a soot-blackened beam. The smoke curls upward into a hole in the roof, which sometimes works, and sometimes turns your home into a smoky nightclub for rats. You reach for another log and pause. There's not much left, maybe 2 logs, and it's only morning. You'll have to ration them, maybe supplement with dried cow dung or twisty bundles of straw. You sigh. The fire is both your lifeline and your worst logistical headache. You remember an old trick your grandmother taught. You dress for the day with the slow resignation of someone layering their own discomfort. First, the under tunic, which smells faintly of onion and damp barn. Then the woolen over tunic is thicker, rougher, and blessedly warmer, but so scratchy it feels like being gently insulted by a hedgehog. Next, a belt made of braided cord. It's not for style, it's to keep your tunic from turning into a tent when the wind picks up. You tie it in a knot, so complicated that even you won't remember how to undo it later. Then come the leggings if you can find them. They're 2 separate tubes of itchy wool, one for each leg, held up by strings and stubbornness. And over them, if you're lucky or especially cold, go your hose, thick woolen socks that climb up past your knees, sagging like old dreams by mid-morning. Your shoes, well, let's be generous and call them foot-shaped hopes. They're made of stiff leather, cracked at the toe, and have holes in places that weren't there last week. You stuff them with straw for padding and warmth. This doesn't help much, but it makes you feel like you tried. Then comes your outerwear, a cloak or cape, often inherited, sometimes from someone who didn't technically die yet, just moved to a warmer village. You throw it over your shoulders like a medieval superhero. Its woolen folds are heavy, and they smell like smoke, mold, and faintly of goat. You pretend that's fine. And finally, you reach for the hat. This one's special, not because it's warm or fashionable, but because it was once part of a curtain. You pull it down over your ears until you resemble a mushroom that gave up on life. This you think is peak fashion. You are a turnip in a sea of turnips. You are ready. You glance around the hut, watching others complete their own version of this potato skin transformation. Your sister pulls a shawl over her head, then wraps a scarf around it. Your cousin chooses violence and skips socks. Uncle Tib remains in his corner, muttering about the glory of barefoot winters and waving a spoon threateningly. Now that you're layered up like a lasagna of wool, it's time to face the cold. You push open the door. It creaks like it's auditioning for a haunted house. A gust of wind slaps you in the face with all the tenderness of a thrown shovel. You gasp. You reconsider everything, but you step out anyway. The village is white with frost. Every twig glazed like a sad pastry. The fields stretch out beyond the cottages, stiff and frozen. Smoke rises from a few chimneys curling into the pewter sky. Somewhere a dog barks. Somewhere else a baby howls in protest of existence. Your breath puffs out in great clouds. You walk quickly, not for exercise, but because stopping means death. Probably, or at least very cold knees. The path to the common barn is slick with ice and something you hope is only ice. You navigate it like an old lady on stilts, arms wide, mouth muttering prayers to Saint whoever handles cold feet. You pass neighbors bundled in equally tragic outfits. Someone has a scarf tied like a bonnet. Someone else is wearing 2 cloaks and a basket. One old man is walking around barefoot with hot bricks tied to his calves. You give him a respectful nod. Historians still argue whether layering or insulation was the preferred method for staying warm. You personally subscribe to the everything you own all at once school of thought. Reaching the barn, you step into the relatively warmer gloom. It smells of hay, manure, and the comforting musk of cows. One of them snorts a greeting. Another eye you suspiciously. The goats ignore you entirely, as goats do. You check on the animals. They're huddled together for warmth, which is smart, and probably more affectionate than most village couples. You pat one cow's flank. She's warm. You briefly consider lying down beside her. You've done worse. In fact, some nights people do sleep in the barn, less because they enjoy the company of chickens, and more because it's less drafty than their own homes. The hay makes decent bedding, and if you curl up between the pigs, you'll wake up sweaty, slightly smelly and alive, which is the goal. Back outside, the cold returns instantly. You wrap your cloak tighter and make your way to the well. The bucket rope is frozen stiff. You jiggle it, you bang it, you mutter something involving St. Cuthbert. It loosens just enough to squeal its way down. Water comes up like a miracle, frigid, clear, and not entirely full of frogs this time. You take a sip. It stabs your throat like betrayal. You drink anyway. Near the well, you see the blacksmith's apprentice hopping from foot to foot. His breath curls like steam. His gloves are fingerless, and his nose has turned a color not found in nature. He nods in greeting and promptly sneezes into his elbow. You both pretend it didn't happen. Your daily tasks await. The soil is too frozen to plow, but you can still check the traps, mend tools, or haul firewood, assuming you can find some. The smell of breakfast still lingers on your fingers. A faint mix of oats, fire smoke, and the metallic tinge of the iron pot. It's not appetizing exactly, but in this century, Your standards aren't high. You're back inside the hut now, crouching near the hearth, letting the warmth seep into your bones while you try to remember if there was such a thing as morning energy before the frost took it all. But your belly's already asking what comes next, which is mildly hilarious considering what you just forced into it. Medieval breakfasts don't come with courses. There's no eggs Benedict or buttered croissants here. Just more of the same oats if you're lucky, stale rye if you're not, and occasionally something that was left out too long, but smells only slightly wrong. This morning, it's barley gruel again, reheated. You ladle out another scoop into a wooden bowl, its bottom so scorched it has its own topography. The gruel jiggles ominously. You tap it with your spoon. It quivers like it's alive. Maybe it is. You eat it anyway. There's a chunk of lard left. Not actual meat, just a smear of animal fat you've been saving like it's a family heirloom. You scrape off a bit with your spoon and swirl it into the gruel. It doesn't melt so much as sink, like a guilty conscience. The result? Slightly shinier sadness. Your sister emerges from the loft with a sneeze and a shiver, pulling her shawl tighter and looking at the bowl like it personally insulted her. Again, she says, not because she expects variety, just as a ritual complaint. You grunt, she grunts back. That's breakfast conversation around here. You sit by the door, eating slowly. Every bite is warm going down, but cold the moment it lands in your stomach. Your fingers are still numb, so you hold the bowl like a hot stone, trying to convince your hands that life is worth returning to. A dog barks outside, then another, then a third joins in for dramatic harmony. You know that bark. That's the someone dropped something edible bark, possibly a turnip, possibly a dead rat. It's hard to say from this distance. You glance out the tiny window. A few villagers are trudging past. One's got a bundle of sticks. Another is dragging a child by the arm. The child appears to be arguing with the sky. You relate. There was no coffee in medieval life. No tea unless you're absurdly wealthy or have a trader cousin who got very lucky. So instead, people drink what they call small ale, a weak, watered-down beer that's safer than the well water and provides just enough buzz to keep morale from falling through the floor. You reach for a small cup of it. It's flat, lukewarm, and tastes faintly of barley and boot. You sip it slowly, not because it's delicious, but because it feels vaguely civilized. Historians still debate whether peasants actually enjoyed this stuff or just pretended to as a coping mechanism. You're going with coping. Your sister slurps her gruel with less grace and more speed. She's got chores to do and frostbite to earn. You both sit in silence for a bit, watching the fire. It pops occasionally, sending sparks into the air like little fireflies with poor impulse control. You remember something your grandmother used to say. A good day starts with warm gruel and no screaming. By that standard, this morning is already shaping up beautifully. Once the bowls are scraped and stacked, by which we mean set on the floor near the dog to lick, it's time for the morning routine, such as it is. You brush your hands off on your tunic and stand. Your knees crack like old wood. You pretend not to notice. Then comes the bread, or what remains of it, stored in a cloth hidden near the fire. The loaf is half stale and half frozen. You cut it with a knife so dull, it might as well be a spoon. Crumbs scatter. You pocket them. Nothing is wasted. There's a lump of hard cheese too, though cheese may be a generous term. It's more of a dairy fossil. You break off a corner and try to chew. It fights back. You chew harder. Eventually it gives in, sort of. Breakfast finishes not with a bang, but with a loud sigh. Your stomach, mildly warmed, retreats into itself like a cat curling under a table. It'll want more soon. You try not to think about it. One of your younger cousins appears, wrapped in something that might once have been a cloak and is now mostly holes. She holds a mug of warm water, sips it like it's soup, and says nothing. You nod at each other like seasoned generals sharing war stories. She's 6. You wipe your mouth with a cloth, then realize it's your sleeve. You shrug, clean enough. The hut smells like damp wool and boiled barley. There's a faint whiff of smoke from the hearth, and something vaguely barn-like from Uncle Tib, who is now snoring loudly in the corner. You gently kick a blanket over him. He swats at it and mutters, "Not the ferrets again." You step outside. The sky is still pewter, and the ground still crunches underfoot. But the air feels slightly liege. You trudge toward the fields, your breath puffing out in little clouds that instantly vanish, like unpaid apprentices. The path under your boots is frozen solid, each step crunching like biting into stale toast. Your toes have stopped sending updates to your brain. They've either gone numb or launched a rebellion. The sky is still undecided about the weather. It might snow, it might rain. It might just continue being a damp gray disappointment. But you've got work to do, whether or not. You pass the old wind-bent fence that marks the edge of the Lord's land. Not that it's clear where your life ends and his begins. Everything you grow, shear, dig, or bury technically belongs to him. You just get the privilege of doing all the work. This morning it's field duty. Even in winter, the land doesn't sleep. It sulks, maybe, but it still needs attention. Fallow fields must be cleared, tools repaired, compost spread. And then there's the never-ending chore of gathering wood, which disappears faster than your hope every time the wind picks up. You reach the tool shed. Shed is a generous term. It's a lean-to built against a rock with a roof, made from what looks like the bones of every broken cart in the village. You pry the door open and grab a spade. It's seen better days. The handle is cracked, wrapped in a bit of twine, and what might be last year's festival ribbon. The blade is dented, the edge dull. You nod to it like an old friend, then set off to dig. The earth is frozen solid, of course. You jab the spade into the ground, and it bounces back like you tried to stab a rock. Again, bounce. Again, vibrating spine. You clench your jaw and try again. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants had stronger backs or simply more patience. You're betting on both, plus a touch of desperation. Eventually, you find a patch that yields. You scrape away weeds, clear stones, and mutter curses into the soil. The work is repetitive, but it warms you more than the gruel ever could. Within minutes, your forehead is damp, and you start peeling back your outer cloak. Nearby, someone's chopping wood. The rhythm is comforting. Thunk, pause, grunt, thunk. You glance over. It's old Mags, swinging an axe with the grim precision of someone who's been doing this longer than the trees have been alive. You wave. She doesn't look up. That's fine. No one here waves unless they're missing a hand. You keep digging. Then you hit something. Thunk. Not a root, not a rock. Something different. You scrape around it. It's roundish, smooth. You dig deeper and pull out an old pot. Clay, chipped, sealed with a waxy lump. You glance around, then pop the lid. Inside is a lump of lard and 3 copper coins. Emergency stash. Maybe someone's grandmother buried it years ago. Maybe someone forgot. You hesitate. Then you rebury it. It's not yours. Also, you're afraid of ghosts, especially stingy ones. You straighten up, back popping. The wind slices across the field like it's trying to peel the skin off your ears. You curse the breeze, then apologize to the saints, just in case they're listening and petty. Nearby, the pigs are rooting around the edge of the barn. One of them eyes you like it knows something. You stare back. It snorts and walks away. Victory. Time passes slowly in the field. The sun barely rises above the horizon. It's like it's been told not to try too hard. Your stomach grumbles again, despite the breakfast gruel's best efforts. You gnaw on a crust of bread pulled from your pocket, slightly frozen, slightly chewier than you recall. You think about warm things, summer festivals, sun-baked loaves, ale that doesn't taste like regret. You think about what it would be like to not be cold. Not just warmer, but not cold. It feels like imagining flight. A cart rolls past on the road, 4 wheels, 1 axle, and a donkey that clearly hates its life. On the back are turnips and a large sack labeled "Do Not Steal." You look away. You absolutely weren't planning anything. Nope. Your hands are red and raw by midday, and your breath has developed that lovely wheeze you call winter lungs. Still, you work, because there's no alternative. And because the moment you stop, the cold creeps in like a nosy neighbor. You manage to gather a decent armful of sticks, not proper firewood, but enough to keep the hearth spitting for a while longer. You tie them with rope and sling them over your back like some kind of medieval turtle. Back through the village, the path is muddier now. A few children dart past you, laughing, chasing each other with sticks in questionable judgment. One slips. They all laugh. You smile despite yourself. You pass the church. It's squat and drafty, made of stone that somehow feels colder than the air. The priest is sweeping snow off the steps, muttering something about sinners and wet floors. You nod in passing. He gives you a look that suggests your soul is probably fine, but could use a quick rinse by the time you return to you. Now comes one of the most humbling and undeniably awkward parts of your daily medieval routine, relieving yourself. You've held it in long enough. Your morning cup of small ale has gone through the digestive bureaucracy and is now filing a very urgent complaint. So you rise from your bench, wrap your cloak tighter, and step back outside into the brisk, nose-pinching air. No, there's no chamber pot. Or if there is, it's currently occupied, missing, or frozen solid. Either way, you're headed to the latrine or, more accurately, to a spot behind the fence post near the hedgerow that everyone in the village pretends isn't the latrine, even though everyone uses it. As you approach the designated bush of public shame, you catch a whiff of familiar odors: stale ammonia, frozen earth, and hay that once had hope. The ground crunches underfoot with a mix of frost and something you hope isn't what you think it is. You look left. You look right. No one around. Still, you feel oddly exposed, like the trees are judging you, which they probably are. You do your business with speed and minimal dignity, squatting in the cold like a tragic woodland creature. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had official latrines or simply a sense of shared denial. In your village, it's definitely the latter. There are rumors that Lord Cadwell has a stone toilet seat with a lid. But that's basically wizardry to you. You clean yourself using what nature provides: moss, grass, or in winter, the tragic final resort, a handful of snow. It's invigorating. You hiss softly and rethink every life choice that brought you to this moment. You tug your garments back in place, shuffle away quickly, and don't make eye contact with the neighbor who suddenly appeared hauling a bucket of slop. They nod. You nod. No one speaks of this. You wander past the pigs, who snuffle at the frozen ground with no shame at all. One of them looks at you like it knows where you've been. You avoid its gaze. Back at the hut, you warm your hands by the fire, pretending that nothing awkward just happened. Your sister raises an eyebrow but says nothing. You give her a look that says don't, and she wisely goes back to poking the pot of soup. Time to turn your attention to cleaning up and doing some minor repairs. One of your boots is falling apart again, the sole flapping like a gossiping fish. You sit near the hearth with a needle and coarse thread, squinting in the firelight as you patch it for the 5th time this month. It's not fine work. The stitching is uneven, the leather stiff with cold and old mud, but you'll take any excuse to sit and not be outside. Plus, the smell of soup has begun to cut through the usual mustiness of the hut, and your stomach perks up like a curious puppy. Your cousin appears with a bundle of sticks under one arm and a sprig of something green in the other. "Smells like rabbit stew," she says, peering into the pot with exaggerated hope. It does not, in fact, smell like rabbit stew. It smells like boiled cabbage and possibly regret. Still, everyone pretends it's going to be delicious. That's part of the ritual. Lunchtime isn't far off. But before you can relax, there's still the matter of fetching more water. The bucket from earlier has been drained, and with so many mouths to feed, there's always another trip to the well. You grab the wooden pail and set out again, shoulders already bracing against the wind. The path to the well hasn't improved. It's still muddy, slick, and dotted with little brown gifts from the local livestock. At the well, you find the rope frozen again. You give it a firm tug, and it creaks like an old man getting out of bed. You lower the bucket slowly, hearing the soft splash below. Pulling it up is the real workout. Hand over hand, wood grinding, muscles aching. At last, you haul the sloshing pail onto the lip of the well and tip it just enough to check for frogs. All clear. You pour a little into a spare pot and balance the rest for the walk back. Halfway home, you slip on something, maybe ice, maybe pig, you don't check. The bucket tips, sloshing cold water down your leg and into your boot. You shriek internally. Externally, you say nothing. You just limp onward, one sock slowly becoming a sad sponge. Back in the hut, you pour the precious water into the main pot and place your boot by the fire to dry. It steams like an angry potato. You'll deal with the soggy sock later. For now, soup. Lunch is ladled into shared bowls. It's cabbage-based, as expected, with a few carrot bits and one single bone for flavor, swirling like a sad, meaty ghost. You eat in silence, soaking up what warmth the fire and food provide. Someone farts. Again, no one reacts. It's just part of life now. After lunch, you clean the bowls, licked clean by the dog first, then scrub them with straw and ash. Soap exists, sort of, but you save it for when things are really dirty, like after the spring festival or childbirth. You sit fa. The bell tolls again, slower this time, like even it doesn't even want to be doing this. Its echoes roll over the frostbitten fields, bounce off stone walls, and nudge every villager into reluctant motion. You sigh and stand, Your knee cracks like a twig. You pretend you're fine. It's time to report for communal work on the Lord's land. Again. You sling your half-dried boot back on and wrap your cloak tight. Out the door you go, shoulders hunched like you're expecting the sky to fall. The cold smacks you awake like an unpaid debt. You shuffle along the path toward the manor fields, following a few other hunched figures doing the same sad march. Lord Cadwell's land isn't far. It's just that everything in winter feels further, harder, heavier. Your spade from earlier rests on your shoulder. Your gloves are damp. And your optimism? That was left behind sometime last year. You reach the field's edge and join the line of peasants already working. They nod. You nod. There's a quiet understanding among you. No one's happy. No one's warm. And no one wants to talk about it. Your job today is to clear brush and spread manure on the soil to prepare for spring. Spring, of course, is a concept distant, vague, and probably fictional. The brush is frozen solid, and your hands throb as you drag brittle branches into heaps. The manure is, unfortunately, not frozen. It steams ominously as you shovel it into the wooden wheelbarrow. You glance around. Old Mags is here again, her face set like stone as she hacks at a bramble. Nearby, a boy named Tom tries to wrestle a stubborn bush from the ground and nearly falls over. You pretend not to notice. Dignity is rare. Let him keep some. Suddenly a voice calls out from the manor. "Lord Cadwell's steward," someone mutters. The group straightens reflexively, like students pretending they were napping during the sermon. The steward appears on horseback, wrapped in furs so thick he resembles a well-dressed bear. His horse snorts clouds of warmth into the air. He eyes the workers, says something vague about expectations, then rides off without offering a single blanket, loaf, or smile. You resist the urge to throw a stick at him. Historians still debate whether stewards were respected administrators or glorified tax collectors with better hats. Based on this guy, you're leaning toward the latter. Work continues. You haul a barrow load of manure to the far edge of the field, where the soil is thinner and meaner. You try not to think about your own thin and mean hands, red with cold, fingers stiff. But there's a rhythm to it, eventually. Scoop, dump, sigh. Scoop, dump, curse softly. Your breath fogs, your feet ache. But the sun has finally decided to make an appearance. Not a full arrival, more like a brief peek behind the clouds, like it's checking to see if you're still alive. You turn your face toward it, soaking in the pale light like it's something sacred. For one long minute, the frost doesn't bite as hard. Even the air seems less cruel. Then a crow shrieks overhead, and the moment passes. You return to the task. Life in this world is full of fleeting warmth, and you learn to collect it like stories. There's some muttering at the far end of the field. Someone's cow wandered into the barley patch. Again, 3 villagers chase it, arms flailing, boots slipping in the muck. You watch in slow motion as one of them falls into a pile of fresh manure. Everyone winces, but no one laughs. Not because it isn't funny, but because they know it could be them tomorrow. Eventually, you get a break. 15 minutes, maybe 10. No one's really sure. You collapse onto a fallen log and pull out a hard crust of bread. It's been in your cloak since morning. You gnaw on it like a squirrel and watch your breath rise into the gray sky. A woman next to you pulls out a pouch of dried apples. She offers you a piece. You accept it like it's a sacred relic. It's chewy, sweet, and tastes faintly of actual joy. You smile. She shrugs. Winter stash, she says. You nod. You both know that the stash is almost gone. You talk briefly about the weather, still terrible, about the steward, still smug, and about rumors that someone downriver saw a merchant with oranges. Oranges! You both laugh. The idea of oranges in this frozen world is as ridiculous as pigs flying or the Lord forgiving next month's taxes. Break ends. You rise again, joints protesting. More hauling, more digging. You pass the time by humming a song you heard as a child. Something about a rooster who outwitted a fox. It ends badly, of course. Everything does in the stories. As the sun begins to dip, your arms feel like wet sacks. The shovel feels heavier. You've lost sensation in your left foot. You assume it's still attached, though you wouldn't bet your last root vegetable on it. Finally, the bell rings again. Work is done for the day. Everyone pauses. No cheering, no dancing. Just a quiet, collective breath. You return your tools, stray. After the day's cold chores and long silences, it's time for something dangerously indulgent, a nap. Not in your bed, of course, that would be wasteful. Beds are for nights, or emergencies, or dramatic fainting spells. No, this nap takes place in the barn, tucked away from the biting wind, somewhere between a bale of hay and a goat with suspiciously intelligent eyes. You make your way to the barn with the kind of exhausted shuffle that only medieval peasants and modern retail workers know. The ground is squishy in parts, and your boot squelches alarmingly. You mutter something to yourself and carry on. Inside, the barn is dim, warmish, and aromatic in the way only a shared space for animals and humans can be. You inhale a cocktail of hay dust, goat breath, and yesterday's chicken decisions. It's awful. It's home. You find your spot wedged between a sack of turnips and a sleepy goat named Elspeth. She shifts slightly as you settle in, then returns to chewing something slowly, thoughtfully, like she's revisiting a particularly boring memory. You lie back, the hay prickling through your cloak. It's not comfortable exactly, but it's familiar. You pull your scarf up over your face, wiggle your toes to make sure they still exist, and let your body melt into the straw. The barn creaks above you. Somewhere outside, a bird calls out a sharp, wintry sound that feels like it was meant for someone else. Inside, the rhythm of animals fills the space. Soft bleats, muffled snorts, the distant pecking of a chicken who's convinced the corner holds secrets. You close your eyes. For a few minutes, maybe longer, you drift. The nap is shallow but satisfying, like drinking half a cup of warm ale while someone gently hums nearby. Time slides by, unimportant. You're not quite asleep, not quite awake, just floating. Then something tickles your cheek. You twitch. Open one eye. A chicken, just standing there on your chest, looking deeply into your soul. You blink at it. It blinks back. There is a silent negotiation. You reach out slowly. It hops off with all the casual grace of a noblewoman exiting a conversation. You exhale. That's about as much excitement as your nap can handle. Elspeth bleats softly beside you. She's warm. Her breath smells faintly of dried nettle and mystery. You reach out and press your hand against her side. She doesn't move away. In this moment, you are bonded by a shared understanding. Winter is no joke, and napping next to something warm is never wrong. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants frequently napped during the day, or if that's a romantic modern projection. You'd argue it doesn't matter. When you work from before dawn to after dusk in frozen fields, a stolen midday nap is less a luxury and more a survival tactic. The barn is surprisingly peaceful. Light filters through the slats above in soft golden lines. Dust floats lazily in the beams, like it's forgotten where it's going. You hear muffled voices outside, someone arguing about cabbage, someone else laughing in that sharp, frozen way people do when they've run out of warm breath. You could stay here forever, really, but eventually life insists otherwise. A goat 2 stalls down starts bleeding like it's composing an opera. Someone knocks over a bucket. You shift, stretch, and feel hay fall out of your hood like forgotten promises. You sit up slowly. Your back protests. Your knees negotiate. Your neck has lost all loyalty. You dust yourself off and glance around. No one has come looking for you. That's a good sign or a bad one, depending on how important they thought your presence was in the first place. You stand. Elspeth watches you with solemn judgment. You bow to her because she deserves it and make your way back out into the cold. The light is already fading. Winter afternoons slip away like dreams, quiet, abrupt, and vaguely annoying. The sky is smudged with lavender and ash. Smoke curls from chimneys in gentle, lazy spirals. You follow the path back to your hut, shaking straw from your hair and trying not to think about how much of it you've probably swallowed. At home, the hearth fire is sputtering, but alive. You toss in another stick, just one, and watch the flames rebound. Your sister glances up from darning a sock. "Where were you?" she asks. You shrug. "Barn." She nods, like this is both expected and acceptable. Dinner is bubbling in the pot. More soup, of course, thicker than lunch, with actual lentils this time. A luxury, possibly a miracle. You sniff and detect a hint of garlic. You try not to weep with gratitude. You sit down, legs outstretched, cloak draped around you like a wilted tent. Your body aches in the familiar way that says, you survived, but not for free. You cradle a bowl of stew, letting the heat soak into your hands. The taste is simple, honest. Maybe a little burnt. Maybe that's intentional. You tell yourself it is. The others join you one by one, each carrying their own weight of the day. Muddy boot. The sun has vanished now, swallowed whole by the long medieval night. Shadows deepen, stretching across the walls like lazy cats. The fire gives off a faint orange glow, licking the sides of the hearth, casting everything in a jittery dance of warmth and distortion. This is the hour when you lean on old tricks passed down by elders, neighbors, or that one weird guy who lives near the woods and insists that onions under the bed can keep away frost demons. You don't question the logic. At this point, anything that keeps you warm is worth trying. First, the hot stone. Earlier, you slipped a fist-sized rock into the fire's coals. Now you wrap it in a bit of cloth. Hold it like a newborn star and tuck it under your cloak straight onto your belly. It radiates gentle heat, just enough to make you sigh out loud. Across the room, your sister is rubbing garlic on her boots. Keeps the cold spirits out, she mumbles. It doesn't, obviously. But it does keep everyone else out of her boots. No one argues. Your cousin is stuffing crumpled rags into the window frame. He does this every night. The wind always finds new ways in. She's clever, that wind, he mutters. She remembers. You nod solemnly. You're not sure what he means, but it feels true. Over by the hearth, Uncle Tib is warming his socks. Not by the fire, but in the fire. You pull them out just before they catch. He grunts. Crispy toes sleep warmer, he insists. You choose not to test the theory. And then there's the hat trick, not a performance. Literally just putting a hat on after you get in bed. It keeps it hot. You once forgot and woke up convinced your ears had left the village entirely. You pull on your own nightcap, more a glorified sock than a hat, and feel 12% warmer immediately. There's also the onion trick. Yes, the onion. You place a sliced one under your bed. Why? Because old Mag swore it draws out the chill and the curses. Historians have yet to reach a consensus on this technique. Most lean toward mildly aromatic placebo. Still, you do it. You've done stranger things. Remember the time someone suggested sleeping between two dogs? It worked. You were warmer and itchy. You reach into your pouch and pull out another of your winter secrets, dried nettle leaves. You steep them in a tin cup of hot water and sip. It tastes like regret, but it's packed with what your cousin insists are heating humors. You're not sure what a humor is, but you'd bathe in them if it helped. The room settles. Everyone's doing their part in the eternal war against cold. Some rub goose grease on their chest. Some line their tunics with hay. One guy down the road claims to sleep in a pile of apples for warmth. You're not sure if he's warm or just mildly fermented. The fire crackles again. And this is where the superstitions creep in. Winter has always had its ghosts. It's a strange story. The cold seems to pull them from the air, or the walls, or the deeper parts of people's memories. Someone starts whispering about the winter knocker, a spirit that taps on doors and slips inside if no one answers. You roll your eyes, but still check the latch twice. Then there's the tale of the frost bride, a maiden of ice who comes for those who sleep without socks. You laugh, but pull yours on anyway, just in case. Historians again argue. Were these stories simply metaphors for illness and death? Or were they communal ways to make sense of suffering? Either way, they worked. You remember them. You obey them. You don't leave bread uncovered. You never whistle after dark. And you definitely don't mock the winter knocker out loud. Your sister throws a pinch of salt into the hearth. For luck, she says. You add one too. For warmth, for luck, for anything. Then comes the oldest trick in the book. You tell a story. Nothing fancy. Just a memory. A tale from 3 winters ago, when a traveling tinker slipped on a patch of ice and landed in a chicken coop. He tried to pretend it was on purpose. The chickens were not convinced. Neither was the farmer. You all laugh quietly, warmly. Laughter, it turns out, is another kind of fire. It lights the room just enough to push back the dark, and it's free. You remember your grandmother used to say, "A good story burns longer than a pine log." You believe it. So does everyone else. Even Uncle Tib, now fully wrapped in a cloak and muttering something about crispy socks. Outside, the wind tests the shutters again. This time, they hold. Inside, someone passes around a bit of honey on hard bread. It's sweet. It sticks in your teeth. It tastes like summer trying to come back. You finish your nettle tea, now lukewarm, and set the cup aside. Your hands are still a little numb, but they feel less lonely. You glance around the room. Everyone is tucked in or near the fire. Layers upon layers of wool, hay, and human stubbornness. You lie back against the wall, your stone still warm at your belly, your onion vigilantly under the bed. The F. You wake with a cough. Not the polite kind either. The kind that starts in the spine and tries to eject your soul. It echoes through the hut, bouncing off the thatch like a warning bell. You sit up, hacking into your sleeve, while your sister groans and pulls the blanket over her head. Your throat is dry. Your nose is trying to decide whether to run or just remain defiantly blocked. Congratulations! You're this week's lucky winner of the communal cold. It's winter. Of course, you're sick. Everyone's sick. The whole village is sniffling, sneezing, wheezing, or muttering through a sore throat. There's a background chorus of coughs at every gathering now, like a poorly tuned choir. You shuffle to the fire, knees stiff, body aching in that special way that only frozen hay beds and early illness can cause. You pour yourself a cup of yesterday's tea. It's cold. You drink it anyway. Your standards have slipped so far that they're basically on the floor with the mouse droppings. There's a rag stuffed with herbs hanging above the hearth. You squeeze it into the cup just to give it something. Your grandmother once called it medicinal. You're not sure if it works or if it's just a sensory distraction. Either way, you sip. Historians still debate whether medieval medicine was grounded more in superstition or trial and error guesswork. You're inclined to believe it was mostly try everything until someone cries less. Today, your remedy options include elderflower tea, onion poultices, rubbing goose fat on your chest, or being bled by the local healer who sharpens his knife with too much enthusiasm. You're sticking with tea. Outside, the village is quieter than usual. Illness will do that. Even the dogs seem to bark less, their usual chaos replaced with lazy pacing and occasional coughing. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak and wander outside to get air, which is ironic, considering that air is probably how you got sick in the first place. Your neighbor's leaning against his hut, snorting loudly into what looks like half a tunic. "Got the quinsy," he says cheerfully. You blink. Quinsy is some kind of throat infection that occasionally swells enough to choke a man. You smile, nod, and take 3 cautious steps away. Another man waves from a window. He looks pale, like painted with milk pale. "Boyle's back," he calls. "The one behind my ear." You offer a thumbs up and continue walking, regretting everything. Back at your hut, your sister is crushing something in a bowl. Horseradish root, maybe, or some sort of angry turnip. She spreads it on a cloth and holds it toward you. "Put this on your chest," she says. You hesitate. "Now," she adds. You take it and retreat to a dark corner, like a wounded animal. The paste is cold, then hot, then very hot. Your skin tingles, possibly in protest, possibly in survival. Uncle Tib offers you a sip of his miracle cordial, which smells like vinegar and regret. You decline politely. He takes a swig and immediately begins telling a story about how he once cured a broken leg with garlic and a hymn. No one corrects him. You lie back down, sniffling. Your head aches. Your body feels like someone used it to patch a thatched roof. Even your eyelids feel cold. And just when you think it can't get worse, someone sneezes on your foot. You lift the blanket to inspect the damage. Yep, definitely mucus adjacent. You sigh and resign yourself to another load of laundry, which in medieval terms means scrubbing fabric in freezing water with lye soap and hopes. You consider the other common ailments swirling around this time of year. There's St. Anthony's fire, which causes burning red rashes and hallucinations. Lovely. Then there's the sweating sickness, which kills in a day, but at least saves you the coughs. Your neighbor once claimed he had it 3 times. He also claims he can talk to geese. So, jury's out. Some villagers believe illness is caused by bad air, miasma. Others blame sin, demons, or stepping on the wrong kind of toad. You personally think it's the cold, the hunger, and the man who keeps licking door handles. But again, no one's asked you. You spend the afternoon wrapped in every blanket you own, sipping onion water and scowling at nothing. The fire feels further away than usual. Someone tried to feed it damp moss. It smoked the room so badly that for 10 minutes, everyone was coughing for a whole new reason. By evening, your fever kicks in. You're not sure if the ceiling is really melting, or if your brain has simply decided that gravity is optional now. Either way, it's interesting. You see shapes in the fire: a fox, a cart, a loaf of bread that's judging you. Your sister wipes your forehead with a cloth that might have once been clean. She mumbles something soothing or possibly threatening. Your cousin reads aloud from a herbal scroll she definitely can't read. Still, it's nice. And then someone brings the blanket. Not just any blanket. The big blanket. Usually, the fire is down to its sleepy embers, glowing like the last coals of a tired dragon. You're still wrapped in the big blanket, which now smells faintly of stew, garlic, and probably hope. You're feeling slightly better, or at least less like you're dying. Your fever broke sometime after midnight, leaving behind sweat, shivers, and a strange dream about being chased by a cabbage with opinions. It's evening now, or possibly early night. The hut is dim, but warmish, full of the soft sounds of people existing quietly. Someone's whittling, someone's humming. Someone is softly muttering what might be a spell, or just a very focused shopping list of things they don't have. And here comes the best part of the day, gossip time. You shift closer to the hearth and sip from a wooden cup of something vaguely herbal. It tastes like boiled weeds and mild resentment, but it's warm and that's enough. Your cousin leans in. You heard about Gerald's pig? This is how it begins. You shake your head because obviously you haven't. No one tells you anything unless you're near the fire with a hot drink and a lap full of mending. Ran straight into the mill pond, she says, lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper. Thought I saw a ghost. A general gasp moves through the room. Was it a real ghost? Someone asks. Or the usual kind, adds your sister. Well, your cousin says, leaning in closer. Gerald says it was white and floating, and it moaned. Could have been his wife, mutters Uncle Tib. You laugh into your cup. It's not that funny. But when you've been freezing and ill for days, anything remotely absurd becomes hilarious. More stories tumble out. There's talk of a stolen chicken stolen. Though the accused swears it wandered into her cooking pot of its own free will. Someone else claims the baker's apprentice is secretly a wizard because his hair never freezes. Not once, they say, with the conviction of someone who's spent far too long watching apprentices' hairstyles. Then there's the whisper about Marjorie, who hasn't been to church in 2 weeks and was seen standing under the full moon with a bowl of milk. No one's accusing her of witchcraft, of course, but they are speaking very pointedly while raising eyebrows. Historians still argue whether village gossip was a form of social cohesion or just communal entertainment. You'd argue both. It's one of the few things that warms a room faster than firewood, especially when it's about someone who isn't present. Tonight's round of gossip is especially lively. The stew helped. So did the ale. You're all laughing more than usual, partly because the stories are funny, but also because it's better than crying about chilblains, backaches, or next week's tithe. Uncle Tib clears his throat. Everyone leans in. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, he delivers. "There's a fox in the church," he announces. Pause. "What?" "A fox," he repeats, "lives under the pulpit, steals the communion bread." Silence. Then, "How do you know that?" "I've seen it," he says, lifting a solemn spoon for emphasis, "and it winked." This causes chaos. Your sister chokes on her tea. Someone drops a spindle. The fire pops in agreement. You lean back against the wall, smiling in a way that surprises you. Your bones still ache. Your throat is raw, but your belly is warm. And for once, you feel connected to the moment, to the hut, to these people with their mismatched socks and suspicious onions. Someone starts singing, softly, an old harvest song, even though the fields are frozen and the barns half empty. The words rise like steam, curling into the beams above, mixing with smoke and laughter. You remember this song. Your mother sang it while kneading bread. Your grandmother hummed it while sewing. It's older than the walls, maybe older than the cold itself. You join in. Your voice is rough, but no one minds. Because here, in the flicker of firelight, singing is less about sound and more about defiance. A way of saying, we're still here. The gossip winds down. The laughter fades. Someone yawns so wide, it sets off a chain reaction. You shift your blanket, already preparing for bed, when your sister adds one final story. Old Meg says the snow speaks. You raise an eyebrow. She says, when it's quiet enough, like now, you can hear it whispering. A pause. Everyone listens. And for just a second, maybe you do hear something. A hush beyond the walls. A breath. A thought. A voice that never quite forms. Of course, it could also be the wind. Or Gerald's pig again. Still, no one laughs. Because winter has ears. And you don't mock what you can't explain. You nod. The room nods with you. And just like that, the night leans in closer, wrapping its arms around the hut like a sleepy giant. The stew pot simmers low. The coals glow deeper. And your heart strangely feels full. Not from food, from something older, something warmer. Call it gossip. Call it memory. Call it survival. You're heading to bed now, if you can call it that. There is no separate room, of course, no soft linens or carved headboard. Your bed is a pile of straw in the loft, flattened by years of sleep and the occasional goat nap. It's covered by a wool sack stitched together from scraps, faded patches, and at least one mystery stain you've chosen never to investigate. You climb the ladder slowly. The rungs are worn smooth, and one creaks in protest under your weight. You step over the spot where your cousin once fell through and blamed spirits. Everyone knows it was the butter he stepped on. Still, you bless the step, just in case. At the top, you crawl into your usual corner. It's slightly warmer here. The thatch above retains just enough heat to keep your nose from freezing off during the night. The trick, of course, is to stay perfectly still so you don't disturb the delicate ecosystem of warmth you've spent all day earning. You nestle in, pulling the wool sack over your shoulders, your knees, your ears. You fold yourself into the smallest possible shape, like a cat pretending not to exist. And then you wait. Wait for your body to stop shivering. Wait for your mind to quiet down. Wait for your toes to admit, finally, that they belong to you again. Sleeping in winter is less about rest and more about endurance. You sleep the way a sailor clings to wreckage, tight, cautious, half alert for changes in temperature, or the sudden appearance of a damp draft sneaking through the roof like a guilty thought. Across the loft, Your sister is already snoring. Not loudly, more like a small engine with rhythm. It's strangely comforting, like a lullaby composed by someone with a deviated septum. Below, you hear the fire crackle its last goodbyes for the night. There's the clatter of a bowl being set down, a whispered prayer, the squeak of a mouse, quickly silenced by a cat who takes its job seriously. And then, silence. It's a thick silence, not the absence of noise, but the presence of stillness, the kind of quiet that fills your ears like snow fills a boot, soft, slow, and inevitable. You close your eyes. Almost. Because first, a lice check. Yes, the medieval bedtime ritual. You scratch your scalp just enough to feel mildly paranoid, then rub a bit of rosemary oil behind your ears. It probably doesn't work, but it smells nice, and it makes you feel proactive. You swat at a flea. Miss A spider lowers itself from the rafter. You blow gently and watch it ascend again. Mutual respect. Your blanket shifts as someone below turns over. A draft creeps in. You hiss softly and stuff a bit of wool into the gap between you and the wall. You consider plugging your ears with hay. Again. This is the rhythm of sleep here. Bundle, shift, scratch, mutter, doze, repeat. And yet, despite all this, you do sleep. Eventually. Because the day has worn you out. Because your body, despite its complaints, is tired in a way that sleep understands. Not dramatic exhaustion, but the quiet kind that creeps into your bones and settles there like fog. Your dreams are odd, vivid. You dream of summer, of bare feet on sun-warmed earth, of bread soft enough to tear apart, of someone handing you a peach. You bite into it and wake up because your pillow smells faintly of turnips. You adjust, turn over, let the dream slip back in. Below, someone coughs. You recognize it immediately. That's Gerald's cough. Deep, rattly, and accompanied by a grunt, like he's annoyed at his own lungs. It's fine. He always sounds like that. He's made it through 5 winters on the same cough. You check your hot stone, still warmish. You shift it closer to your stomach and sigh. There's a comfort in the weight of it, in the fact that, just for now, you're not freezing. Not quite. Historians still puzzle over how medieval people survived these winters without modern insulation. Some point to shared body heat, others to high tolerance. Some even believe that nightly rituals, songs, stories, and laughter played just as vital a role as wool and fire. You believe them. You remember every detail of this night. The warmth of the stew, the crackle of gossip, the flicker of firelight, and the way even the cold felt slightly less cruel when shared. Sleep comes again, thicker this time, heavier, like the wool pressing down on your chest. You let go. Let your body sink into the straw. Let the itch in your scalp become a distant hum. Let the worries of tomorrow, of tithes, of soup, of cracked boots, wait their turn. For now, you're in the safest place a peasant can be, under a roof, near a fire, beside people who'd notice if you disappeared. That's all you ask. That, and maybe a lice-free night. But mostly just this. Sometime in the middle of the night, you stir. The wind has changed. It no longer howls like a beast clawing at the shutters. Now it whispers. Low, eerie, like it's telling secrets meant for someone else. You lie there, unmoving under your rough wool blanket, every muscle still, ears tuned like a deer in tall grass. The hut creaks softly as the cold shifts its weight across the thatch. The fire downstairs has burned down to its bones, just a low orange pulse in the hearth, like a heart barely beating. You can't see it from the loft, but you can feel its slow surrender. The air has grown colder, not sharp yet, not biting, but insistent. It curls into the edges of the room like smoke in reverse. Your nose is cold. Your breath comes out in faint white puffs, visible even in the faint moonlight. You consider burrowing deeper under your blanket, but that would mean repositioning, and repositioning would release the fragile heat you've spent hours cultivating. You shift just slightly, enough to pull the blanket over your ears. It smells like sheep, stale smoke, and winter laundry, meaning laundry that hasn't seen warm water in months. Still, it's yours. It's familiar. And familiarity in this season is half the battle. Sleeping in winter is an act of strategy. You don't just lie down and dream, you make a tactical plan. Hot stone wrapped in cloth around the belly? Check. Wool socks? Check. Onion under the bed to ward off chills and curses? Don't ask, just do it. Half a crust of bread within reach? Yes. You once woke up at midnight starving and had to chew your own sleeve. You've learned. You listen. Downstairs, someone turns over and mutters. The sound of a spoon falling gently to the dirt floor. A sniff. A sigh. Maybe Uncle Tib murmuring about the frost that walks. You decide not to engage. You shift again and accidentally poke your foot into a cold patch of straw. The gasp that escapes your lips is mostly silent but still dramatic. You recoil, pulling your feet back into your carefully heated nook, heart briefly convinced you've stepped into the afterlife. You try to sleep again, but your mind wanders. You think of the fire, how it used to roar when the kindling was dry and the logs thick. You remember the rare nights when you were actually warm enough to sleep flat on your back, arms unwrapped, breathing without seeing your own breath. Tonight is not one of those nights. Still, you drift. And then, a dream. You're lying in a meadow. The sun is hot, not warm, hot. You can feel it on your arms, your cheeks, even your eyelids. The grass beneath you is dry, golden, humming with bees. The sky above is wide and so blue it hurts to look at. You hear laughter, someone singing. You turn your head. It's your sister, but younger. She's carrying a basket of peaches, ripe, sun-soft, juice dripping down her elbow. She tosses you one. You bite into it, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever tasted. Sweet, warm, alive. The world smells like honey and bread. You smile so wide it wakes you. Because what you actually bit was your blanket. You spit out a bit of wool and blink into the dark. The dream fades instantly, leaving only the hunger behind. You lie there a moment, staring at the wooden beams above you. One of them has a crack shaped like a dog. You've named it Jeff. Jeff, the beam dog. He's good company at 3 a.m. Then you hear it, the soft clatter of hooves on wood. Number it can't be. You turn your head, and of course, there she is, Elspeth, the goat. She's climbed into the loft again, somehow, silently. She's standing at the edge of your straw mattress, like she owns the place, chewing thoughtfully, staring at you with those horizontally slitted eyes that seem to know too much. You whisper, "This is my corner." She responds by sitting down, right next to you, and then burps. The warmth of her body is undeniable. You scoot closer. She doesn't move. You both lie there, sharing heat and mutual suspicion. Historians still puzzle over how peasants manage to stay warm at night with no insulation, no heating, and no real privacy. The answer, in your case, is one goat and a small prayer. You reach under the blanket and adjust the hot stone near your feet. It's no longer hot, barely even warm, but it's something. You tuck it into your lap and sigh, settling again. Below, the hut is quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like snow. thick, waiting. You can't hear it falling, but you feel it pressing into the world. And then someone coughs. A deep, damp, wet-sounding cough. The kind that rattles your bones just by hearing it. Gerald, you mutter. Of course, he's been coughing since the last full moon. Some say it's a chest cold. Others say it's the ghost of a broken promise. Either way, no one stands too close to him at meals. You roll over trying to block the sound. But now you're awake again. Your nose drips. You wipe it on your sleeve and hope the saints aren't watching. Eventually, you find that narrow line between... By the time you step outside, the snow has already started losing its perfection. A few sets of footprints trail through the blanket of white, wide-set boots, child-sized skips, one pair that looks suspiciously barefoot. You suspect old Mags again. Either that, or Gerald's finally decided shoes are a conspiracy. The air bites at your cheeks, but it's the good kind of cold, crisp, clear, the kind that fills your lungs like it means something. The world is washed clean. For a few quiet moments, even the mud has disappeared. You squint towards the horizon. The fields lie still under a gentle powdering, like someone dusted the earth with flour. Smoke rises from the neighbor's chimney, spiraling gently before vanishing into a sky that can't decide whether it wants to be blue or just stay undecided. Your first job today is clearing the path to the well. Snow means ice, and ice means injuries, and injuries mean the healer rubbing duck grease on your ribs while telling you about her cousin's haunted clavicle. You fetch a wooden shovel from beside the door. It's not a good shovel. It's flat, warped, and splinters when you look at it too hard. But it's yours, and that's what matters. You begin clearing the path, each shovel load a wet, heavy thud. You move slow, not because you're lazy, but because snow this thick has opinions. It clings to everything. It resists logic. It's less like moving water and more like pushing sleeping cats that have decided you are the problem. A neighbor passes by, nods, and mutters something about the long winter, which is funny because winter is always long. No one ever says, "Remember that breezy 2-week winter?" Number. It's always a siege. You clear halfway to the well before stopping to rest. Your back aches in that deep, knotted way that says you're no longer 20. And even when you were, you still had bad knees. You sit on a stump, watching your breath twist in the air. Then you hear a distant creak, slow, rhythmic, and growing louder. You turn your head. A cart is coming down the lane. It's a curious sight. The cart is pulled by 2 oxen who look like they've seen too much. The driver is wrapped in so many cloaks that he resembles a very determined laundry pile. Behind him, stacked high, are sacks of grain, bundles of firewood, and wait, is that oranges? Number can't be. Your eyes must be playing tricks. But there, nestled in straw, glowing faintly like treasure, is a cluster of round orange fruit. You stand, you stare. The cart passes. The cloaked driver glances at you, nods, doesn't stop. You remain rooted to the spot. Someone nearby gasps. "He's from the monastery," they whisper. You nod slowly. Of course. Monks, they get everything. Historians still argue about whether monasteries hoarded the best supplies during famine. You don't need to debate. You just saw a monk with citrus. You return to your snow path with new energy. Because now, there's hope. Hope that somewhere, tucked behind a stone wall in a Latin manuscript, someone is peeling an orange. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get a peek at Sniff if you pass by later. You finally reach the well. The rope is frozen, as usual. You jiggle it free and lower the bucket. The pulley squeals. You whisper an apology to it. It squeals again, as if accepting your offering. The water sloshes up, clean and icy. You fill your pail and begin the walk back. Carefully, each step is a negotiation. Halfway home, your foot slips. It always slips. You don't fall exactly. You just rearrange your position in space, suddenly and violently. You land in a snowbank with a whump and a loud oof. The bucket flies. Water arcs into the sky like a frozen rainbow and lands directly into your hood. You lie there for a moment, considering your life. Then you laugh. You have to, because it's cold and wet and absurd and somehow deeply, inevitably medieval. Back at the hut, you peel off your cloak, now soaked and steaming. Your sister stifles the giggle. You glare, then smile, then sneeze, hard. The day proceeds in small bursts of movement, tending the animals, breaking the ice in the pig trough, helping your cousin fetch firewood from under the snow-covered pile behind the shed. He falls in once. You don't help right away. By late afternoon, the sun drops lower. Its light turns gold and strange. The snow glows. The whole world feels dipped in warm honey, even if your feet are still very much dipped in damp socks. Inside, the hearth is burning better now. Your sister made a broth. It smells like garlic, carrot, and hope. You sip it slowly, watching snow slide down the window. Uncle Tib appears from the back room holding a bundle of cloth. "What's that?" you ask. He grins. "Festival boots." Festival. You blink. Then it hits you. The solstice is coming. The shortest day. The longest night. The turning point of the year. You'd almost forgotten. People start preparing early. Not because there's much to prepare, but because thinking about preparing feels festy. You wake before dawn. Again. Your eyes open to darkness, true darkness, the kind that makes everything feel too close. Like the walls are leaning in just a little. The loft is silent, except for the slow breath of your sister and the occasional dreamy snort from Elspeth, the goat who's once again claimed part of your blanket. You lie still for a moment, listening. Not for danger. Not for wolves or bandits or frost spirits. Just for the hush itself. There's a peace to it this hour. The fire below hasn't been stirred yet. The air is cold enough that your breath curls like a sleeping cat under your nose. You don't want to move, but you do. Carefully, you peel back the blanket, preserving as much warmth as possible. You descend the ladder in practiced silence. One creaky step, one skip, one breath held. The heart is down to its glowing bones. You kneel beside it, coaxing it gently. You blow. At a twig. A dry curl of bark. Whisper to it like an old friend. The flames shiver back to life with reluctance, like a tired old man rising from bed. The hut slowly brightens. You see familiar shapes take form. Your sister curled in her straw bed. Your cousin slumped near the wall with one sock halfway off. Uncle Tib snoring into a wooden spoon. Everything is as it should be. You step outside, cloak tight, and the cold greets you like a slap with manners. But the sky, oh, the sky is waking too. A pale pink bloom spreads from the horizon. Snow still covers the earth, but it sparkles now, gently, as if trying to make up for being so unfriendly all week. You breathe it in, cold, yes, but fresh, new. This is how mornings begin. Not with song, not with warmth, but with a quiet, stubborn return. You check the animals. One of the pigs is standing in the wrong place again. You guide it back with minimal grumbling. The chickens regard you with suspicion as always. You accept this as your place in the peasant hierarchy. You gather a bit of wood, feed the fire, begin breakfast. Nothing special gruel again, but it smells warm, and that's more than enough. One by one, the others wake. Each is a little groggy. Each is a little grateful. The day begins. There will be work, cold, chores, an argument about someone stealing firewood that was never theirs in the first place. But for now, there is stillness. You sip from your cup. You wrap your hands around the warmth. And in that moment, you remember what this whole thing is about. Survival, yes, but also persistence, the daily unglamorous miracle of continuing. Because winter doesn't care about your feelings. The snow won't comfort you. The wind won't ask how you're doing, but you get up anyway. You carry water anyway. You dig, you mend, you cook. You laugh at the bad jokes and squint into the low sun and scratch at the flea bite. And still somehow, you keep going. You're not a hero. No one will sing about you, but you'll outlast the cold. You always do. You finish breakfast, wash the bowl, stir the coals again. You hear someone laughing outside. A child, probably. It's a ridiculous sound, bright and full of something the cold can't quite reach. You smile. Elspeth escapes briefly and is retrieved without much ceremony. The pig steps into the water bucket. Again. Uncle Tib tells a story about how the snow used to be deeper, colder, and better for your joints. No one believes him, but we all nod anyway. And just like that, the day becomes another one added to the chain. You survive the night. Again. And you will do it tomorrow too. Now the light begins to fade again, slipping softly down the walls, gathering in corners like old wool. The day has done what it always does, arrived without permission, stayed longer than expected, and left its mark in quiet ways, in the ache of your legs, the soot on your hands, the curl of steam from your bowl. You've worked, you've mended, you've carried water and stories and laughter through another round of winter. Now it's time to rest. The fire is low but steady. You've banked it for the night, tucked it in with one last log. Its warmth sighs across the room. Someone is already snoring. Someone else is humming, almost asleep. Outside, the snow has turned to silver under a shy moon. The trees are still. The wind, for once, has nothing to say. You lie down, blanket over your shoulders, hot stone under your feet. The hut settles into its own version of sleep. You listen to it breathe. The creak of wood, the hush of ash, the soft rhythm of those who lived another day. And as your eyes grow heavy, your thoughts drift like snowflakes, slow, soft, settling. You're safe. You're here. And tomorrow will wait. For now, rest. Close your eyes. Let the cold stay outside. Let the warmth hold you. You've earned it. Good night.